To me, it's crazy how one of the worst experiences of my life became the greatest catalyst for my highest timeline. And when I say highest timeline, I'm still getting there. I'm still overcoming so much, and I'm still going towards that. But I already have seen so many things improving in my life since I started to taking my healing journey seriously. And for example, I manifested a really regulated nervous system, and I'm at a point in my life that I really do not care at all what people think about me. And I'm not just saying this because, because it sounds cool, and I don't give a I don't that's not my intention at all. It's just simply now I can live my life exactly for me, not I don't live my life anymore for what other people are gonna think, and I want this because it's gonna look cool from the outside. And I feel like these are the things that people sometimes don't even realize about just creating their life in this way, creating their life for other people and for validation, basically. um, but yeah, I this one of the worst moments of my life was 2 years ago, when I used to live in New York, and I decided to quit my job and leave everything, like leave that city basically. And it was such a strange period of my life. It was such a shock how I was seeing everything for how they really are, and it's really a shock to your nervous system to see reality as it is. And but yeah, I'm not gonna talk about all of that in this video. I'm not gonna talk about everything that happened. I already made so many videos about just like being in environments with so much gossip, so much drama, and people gaslighting you, and just dealing with so much projection. And then going back home, going back to, I don't want to call it home, Paraguay, which is the country that I was born and raised, is not my home. That's my home country. The place I was born and raised, it's not my home. But yeah, going back to Paraguay and seeing just understanding everything, all my upbringing from such a different level, I feel like 2024 for me became such a big realization. That was, just to sum up everything that happened, bullying, friendship fallout, people just treating you like dehumanizing you. Just, I heard people talking about me in ways that I would not talk about anyone. I feel like today I see it in such a different perspective. I used to get super triggered by it. But now, kind of looking at it from a higher perspective, everything people say about you says so much more about who they are more than about you. People just dehumanizing you, the way they talk about you or your body or the things you do. And many of this gossip is just not the reality at all, and I think I mentioned it also in YouTube, this is I'm not gonna get too much into this about all that happened at that period in my life, but I that was a moment in my life that I truly started listening to everything were people saying about me, and I really disconnected from myself. I feel it became so big that everyone around me like started seeing me this way. And this is what I mean, like gossip, it's super dangerous because it just keeps like growing and growing and growing. And don't get me wrong, the less you pay attention to it, the better you are without it. And that's actually what you should try to do, to not give any of your attention or energy towards any gossip about you or any gossip about anyone. Um, but yeah, I was just tapping into how everyone else just saw me, and I remember I saw this distortion of me that I also hated, I hated this version of me because I was seeing myself through their eyes, and I hated this version, hated this distortion. And that's the thing, once you start tapping into this and hearing the words that people say about you and these horrible projections, you start to believe it. Like your subconscious said, like, okay, if all these people, if like 5 people think this about you, 5 is fine, but like 20, 30, 40, 80, 100, and like, you know what I mean? I went to like a different continent, and people still heard stories about me, and it's like you want to make connections with people, but your name is already distorted, and kind of like people already have a perception of you before even knowing you. But yeah, just this plus the bullying and this, like, I mean, I remember going to these spaces and people giving you like this petty energy and these like shady comments, like kind of like they know something about you, and they like kind of do it so that they know it would trigger you, because at that point in my life it really used to trigger me. I was in such a low state, so paranoid. I mentioned it before, but I was doing a lot of psychedelics. Before that, I did a little bit during that worst time in my life, and highly, highly do not recommend. If you are really going through a really hard time in your life, if it's not like, I mean, you should maybe see a specialist and that they can guide you, or maybe do plant medicine and really, I mean, explore that option. But do not just, I mean, I used to do psychedelics just in my room, and I feel like I got so much out of it in the best way. Don't get me wrong, like, I feel like psychedelics really transformed my life, and really, I don't want to say psychedelics saved me, but I feel like me choosing to do psychedelics in this lifetime, I saved myself. I took the first steps to get out of this wheel of suffering, this death and rebirth that I truly believe that it's been going through like lifetimes and lifetimes. And it's the moment that you realize like this is the life that I truly, I'm putting an end to all that cycle, this loop, continuous loop, never ending loop, that if you don't decide to wake up in this lifetime, you're gonna keep doing it until it becomes so bad that it leaves no room for you to awaken yourself, basically. But anyways, this video, it's already taking so many turns. I just know I need to share a story in this video. I felt called to share a story, but I'm open to whatever this video wants to go. But yeah, I'm not, I feel like I already talked too much about what happened in New York. But that's not the focus of this video. Um, but yeah, I just, coming back to what I was saying in the beginning, New York, all that horrible moment in my life really became a catalyst to all this healing, this level of healing and level of healing my subconscious. And if you think about it, like your subconscious is everything. Life is just being projected from you. You know, you're not just this physical being living in this physical world and the external it's what's real. No, you are what's happening to you in the external. It's you projected out. You know what I mean? It's your subconscious and the beliefs you hold about the world. We create this reality based on the beliefs we are holding. And yeah, that moment in my life in New York, I was like, first, this is not working out. It was really hard for me to leave that environment because I already had a job that was basically paying for a lawyer for me to be able to stay in the US. They were sponsoring me. I already paid the apartment for like the next year lease. There was like all these things that it was like so hard for me to live, but I still was able to do it. And don't get me wrong, that job thing, that was, I feel like that was also like a moment. I made a whole video about competitive people too. I had a coworker that was so horrible. Um, but yeah, this was a point in my life that leaving this environment was such a hard decision, but I knew was the best decision. So I did, and everything turned out great. It was super stressful to leave that thing, but the universe always takes care of whatever. Once you decide to heal yourself, once you decide to choose better for yourself, even if it's hard to rearrange many things in your life, you know, there's many bad decisions you have been making, so there's a lot of rearrangement and it might feel like a lot of chaos, but the universe really would help you to try to leave this environment as smooth as possible if you allow it to. But yeah, I mean, I really thought that after I decided like, okay, I'm gonna leave this environment, I was at a point in my life that I saw no light at the end of the tunnel. I thought, I mean, I saw a psychic later, a year after, and she told me that if I stayed in the city, I would have died in that environment, basically. And I felt that in a soul level. I felt that like if I stayed here, I was also doing a lot of drugs and YouTube, please do not delete this video. This is purely for mental health awareness purpose only. But yeah, I was doing a lot of ketamine. My reality became so bad that the only thing that I wanted to do was to escape. And ketamine for me became like an escape for me, that I could escape from the heaviness of this world. And I was doing it daily, like in the morning when I wake up, after I came back from work, I became like, it was such a heavy environment, you know? It's such a heavy environment because to me, work is fine. Don't get me wrong, like work, doing the work I was doing still, I was an architecture designer in an interior design firm. And that was fine. Like they were not like overworking me, like I was not like a slave or anything, you know, in that sense. But to me, what's hardest, it's this like corporate politics. This is what, I find it so hard. But yeah, I remember after work every day, I wanted to go to the gym after, but I I arrived in my apartment, and then I did a bump of ketamine to kind of like ease the day. I knew I had to change. I knew I was at a point in my life that I didn't like my life. My life became, everything became heavy, you know? I was really prioritizing my work, and with that, they were sponsoring me, so I would spend a lot of time doing the visa. It's like getting a visa, I think it was like an O1 visa, and it takes like, it's a lot of work, like portfolio, resume, and not just that, but like 10 letters of recommendation. It's a lot of work. But yeah, my life became so not fun, and everyone around me, like all that, like my friend group, it's like realizing that you are surrounded with people that are so not good for you. And that's the thing. I left this city and I went back to Paraguay, and I feel like you realize, you think that you're going back home and everyone's gonna be, I don't know, it's gonna be amazing, but you are coming, I was coming back to Paraguay with different eyes, you know? The illusion is gone. You really see people for who they are. And yeah, but the point of all of this is that I don't think I would have taken my healing journey seriously. And this is not only to say like, oh, your healing journey is just like this thing that like you go on a journey, like this is your life. This is your entire life, you know? This is you overcoming yourself. It's not just a healing journey. This is everything, you know? It's you overcoming yourself, you know? This is not, oh, I'm just exploring myself in like, no, this is your entire reality. This is why I mean, like, people that say that this is not a priority for them, or that they are just too focused on their work, or that they just have to take care of their family, that's because once you decide to take care of yourself, mental health, and just your connection to life, the universe, whatever you want to call it, everything else in your life will rearrange and like will fall into place. It's, to me, when people give us excuses to like why they are not healing themselves, that's, they are just avoiding doing the work. That's all that is. But yeah, to me it's crazy how this moment of my life changed. I mean, it's rock bottom. That's what it is. Like, it was rock bottom, as simple as it is, and my self-worth just going so low. Just like, I mean, I went back to Paraguay. I was depending on my parents again. Just like my career, finances, friendships, relationships, all these things were going to like a rock bottom. And this is when I say like friendships, it's not like only like, oh yeah, I lost a friendship. I'm talking about bullying, betrayals, people stabbing you in the back, just projecting so much onto you, this distortion of you, and it became so bad, and it amplifies, and you understand that like you are seeing it, and you are still very wounded, and it's kind of like your mind, your psyche getting attacked, you know? So it's, you just get like feeding like negative thoughts and more negative thoughts, because you're creating a very undesirable reality. And you're just manifesting worse and worse of a reality for you. And I was very aware of this, and yeah, so I went back to Paraguay and I was there for a few months. I was like traveling, you know. And this is what I mean. This I'm very serious with this. My family, if you decide to take care of yourself and if you really want to overcome yourself, and whenever you're choosing yourself, and the sooner you do that and the sooner you choose yourself, and the sooner you become more unapologetic about your, you not abandoning yourself for other people, you prioritizing yourself and focusing on yourself, not on the external. People are gonna need your help. Hey, can you do this? Can you, the sooner you choose yourself, the easier it would be. And the resources, you will have the enough resources for do the things you want to do. And this is something I'm learning right like at the moment too. The universe will support you with from different people. I was at a point in my life that my family was, I mean, all the things that I was able to just to afford, like I went to, I mean, after I left the city, after I left New York, I went to do ayahuasca 2 times, and that's not a cheap thing to do. And I also went to a meditation retreat. I mean, that was like my aunt invited me, and I was also able to prioritize like meditation and breath work and just work on myself. I also did a lot of things that like out of pressure, out of lack. Like I took a job that I'm not proud of, I mean, I don't know what you're thinking, but it's not nothing crazy, but it's just like a job for kind of like an architecture project that it's kind of like a gated community, and it's just so not my values. But I decided to take the money for, sorry, not the money, like the money too, but it was so little also. I feel like that tells you a lot of like how that's something I'm dealing with right now too. It's like your ability to receive. If you like, if you're not able to receive a lot of money, that's another reason that you need to heal yourself, because it has nothing to do about the external. It has nothing to do about like doing more job or doing overtime, I'm sure there's like by forcing, I'm sure there's ways that you can like make more money, but the root of it, it's your self-worth and how you feel worthy of receiving like abundance in your life. And this is something that I'm learning. It has nothing to do with doing more work on the external, working overtime so that I could, no, it's like, it's to healing that wound. But anyways, sorry, I feel like I'm jumping into so many places, like from here to here, but I promise I will try to make the most sense of all of this. But yeah, what happened to me in New York, just like this very dark period of my life and feeling so alone. And when I say alone, I don't mean I've been living alone and I don't feel alone at all, that's not the problem. I feel alone when I feel alone when I am around people and I feel disconnected, I feel lonely with people that just give you weird energy, like shady energy and like kind of like this like mean girl energy. That's how I feel lonely. Like I feel like so disconnected, and I do believe that there's a lot of people in the world that I can connect with, and I know I feel like I will find my soul family in this lifetime. I feel like that will happen for sure, but I have no rush into getting into it, you know. I enjoy my alone time. But yeah, when I say that that was like a very alone period of my life, I was surrounded by people, you know. I was surrounded by people, but just this weird energy and this like shady comments from like people that I consider friends, and coming back to Paraguay, like family, cousins, like they were, is it was it was all around me, and it's just that I was finally seeing everyone as they are, you know. I was finally seeing people as they are, and it's always been like that, you know. I was just so asleep, so asleep. And I feel like I've always been super kind of like a sponge that I feel like the weird energy, but you are not, I was not conscious of, you know, I was always like, this feels so weird, but now it's super clear, you know. Now it's like, and I feel like with people today, it would just repel, you know. It's just not a, it's just not a match. But yeah, that was a very alone period of my life. So much darkness, so much paranoia, and it wasn't like a, I was not able, I didn't heal from all of that like from like in the next day. It took some time. It took a lot of, I mean, I'm telling you, like 2 times doing ayahuasca, but I healed. That was like what happened to me in New York was just like kind of like what stayed in my subconscious. But when you do ayahuasca, you go to the root of it. You go to, like, you go to your childhood, you know, things that like you completely repressed, and everything that happened to you as an adult, that's just a reflection of what's been lingering for years. And it had to get so bad for me, like in terms of like my entire reality being so unbearable, so bad all around, like the environment, that it had to go to it had to become so bad for me to finally prioritize, you know, like rewiring my brain, you know, like releasing all these layers that you've been carrying for so many years, maybe lifetimes, you know. And this thing about New York, one thing that I did was like I started to believing in the words that people were saying about me, you know, and it just affected my psyche so much. I remember it distorted the way I started to look at myself. And, you know, like this is not new, you know? Whenever you're a kid, and I feel like I'm not an exception or anything. I feel like there's probably just a few people in the world that actually grew up in like healthy environments, you know, like environments that where they can feel safe. I also made an entire video about that, and I'm not gonna get I'm not gonna get too much into this video, but yeah, I wanted to mention doing ayahuasca because whenever I left New York, I was not planning to do ayahuasca or anything. I feel like after I quit my job and left the city and went back to my parents' home, I was still like kind of like processing. And also like I should also mention that before my life fall apart in New York, I decided to like my life started to fall apart in the spring of 2024, and a few months before that, in November 2023, I I have been doing psychedelics for like 2 years before that. Not too much, like not too many doses or anything. But that day I decided to, I felt cold, I want to say. I felt cold to do an acid trip. And I have done acid before, but this is a day that I chose to do like a high dose of acid. And so I did a 3.5 tab acid journey in the morning. I remember so well, and it was just like this, like mind blowing, um, this like just like mind blowing experience. And I remember I felt so alive after it, like so alive, so one with everything, and so like looking back, I can say like that was like the definition of love, you know. I knew, like I was very aware that the people around me were not perfect, you know, but I was still loving everyone, you know, like, and it's kind of like, this is something that I can confirm. Even in New York, like at that point in my life, I was still, sorry, I have a cramp. I still remember I went to parties and I felt this, like, I'm gonna say it, but it's jealous people, you know, very like envy. You feel like these people saying like bad stuff about you and just giving you like this like jealousy, like this, you know, like snake energy. Um, but I remember I was like, I knew what was happening, but I was like still, I feel like whenever you are vibrating so high, you know, you are like this, you are, and I feel like this is where we should shoot for, you know, in this life, to be so full of love, you know, that's all that you are, that it's in your field, you know. And I remember like all these things, it would just kind of like, how can I say this? It's kind of like it bounces back, you know. It cannot even enter your energy field because you are such a different vibration. But but I feel like at that time in my life, if I had boundaries, because I didn't have boundaries, you know, you cannot just be like, I feel like so many people are like, oh, pretending to be like all love and light, and they have poor boundaries. It's, you are never gonna get to the place you want if you do not have boundaries, you know. If you still allowing these people that wanna just take and treat you poorly around you because you're like, oh no, I accept, you know, like you need boundaries. But at that point in my life, I didn't have any boundaries. I was still, yeah. And I had a really, oh, and like something that I should say too is I did that acid trip in November, and a week, not even a week, like days after, I went to Berlin to party on a weekend. We went with some friends at that time, to this gay party in Berlin, and it was like a really fun weekend. And something I realized about myself is that even in moments that I felt a lot of darkness, a lot of people just projecting and being horrible, I still remember, I feel like even in moments that like that happens, I'm still able to enjoy the experience, you know. Because it is like Berlin, it's such an experience. Like, to me, partying in Berlin, I don't know if I go now, Like I'm sober now, and I feel like I'm still gonna enjoy it so much. I love like music, I love techno, but I feel like I'm still gonna enjoy it a lot. It's gonna be different. Um, but yeah, I remember just being like, even I was seeing all of it. There was a part of me that was still enjoying the experience for what it is, without all that. I don't even want to say the humanness, but just like this disease, you know, I want to call it disease, like this darkness, you know, just taking everything out, just that friend group and every, like all the dynamics is just like super, like so much gossip and projections and just people that feel good to just dragging your name to the dirt, you know, like that makes them feel better, you know. If they talk badly about you, that makes them feel better, you know, they get something out of it. People that feel so bad within themselves, within their own bodies, that they want, consciously or unconsciously, want to make you feel bad too, you know. They kind of like want to, you to drag you into their horrible ways that they see the world, you know. And they, ooh, I'm not gonna get too much into that, but yeah, I went from doing an acid trip straight to Berlin, you know, doing drugs, being like super sexual, you know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, like being sexual is fine. But it's just like that was a point in my life that I'm not in this space anymore, but that was a point in my life that I just wanted to explore and just have sexual relationships. I mean, sexual experiences with a lot of people. And you know, like you're kind of like a kid in a candy store that you just want to try everything, you know. And I want to say, like, even the people that I was going for, it was just like kind of like just tasting, you know. It was not even like my type. Like I didn't even like go for the things I really wanted, you know. I was just trying and trying and trying. And anyway, the main point is that I went from doing like a spiritual awakening days after, straight to Berlin, drugs, just like this very super toxic environment. But the point is that I had this spiritual awakening and I didn't have any integration, you know. After doing ayahuasca, you realize how important is to integrate what the experience you just went through. And I remember as soon as I got back to New York, I had a dark night of the soul. Like, it's kind of like everything that you wanted about your life, it's all like falling apart, you know, like all this. It's very shocking. And I remember I got sick. I had this deep, deep calling to drop everything, and I was seeing the dynamics of this friend group, you know. I was seeing how how they operate, you know. It was so clear, you know. But I had a trip to Miami for someone I honestly, I really like this friend. I consider this a friend, and invited me to his birthday weekend in Miami. And it was like with this friend group, and I really wanted to go, to be honest. But I was deciding, like, you know what, I'm gonna cancel this trip. I feel this call to leave the city. This was around like November, December. But I didn't listen to my intuition. I decided to stay, and I really had this idea of just dropping everything and moving to Australia. I wanted to do that, and I didn't. I decided to stay in New York, and then I got a new job, which basically my life. That's when like my life became chaos. But that was became so bad that I later went back to Paraguay to my parents' home and just realizing a lot of like how just how that whole environment too is like super toxic. And this is why I mean nothing that happens to you as an adult is nothing to do with, I mean, don't get me wrong, you can accumulate more bad experiences just by life in general, but things are just reflection of what happened to you in childhood. This is what I'm like, like that's the root of everything, you know. You do the first years of your life, that's everything. Like the rest is just like what happened later, you know, the aftermath, you could say it. And that's why like people that do drugs or have addictions, and I feel like religious people would be like, oh, that's darkness, you know, they fall into drugs. No, like the darkness is what happened to them as kids, you know, like that's the real darkness. The real darkness is what happened to you like in childhood, you know. Maybe you've been through abusive relationships, maybe you have very narcissistic parents, maybe you, a lot of things can happen. Some people get abused, and like that's just the aftermath. The like you maybe choosing to do drugs and becoming addicted to it. This is just the aftermath, you know, a way that people use it to cope with whatever they experience, you know. That it's, this is why people try to blame it onto drugs. That's just a tool that people use to cope, you know. I'm not saying that, I mean, there's drugs that are really super harmful, super harmful. Like people that do like meth twice and they get addicted to it for their lifetime. That's it, it's crazy. And when I say psychedelics, I never put those in the same category as like these really hard drugs. I do believe that psychedelics, if taken responsibly, are could be very beneficial for people, for like their healing and becoming more self-aware and for self-development. It's a great tool, you know. And that's the thing, psychedelics is not like, for example, if we talk about acid or mushrooms, I'm sure people can use it to escape, but it's more, it's kind of like an uncomfortable experience, you know. It's not like ketamine, you fully like disconnect from the world, you disassociate, and it's kind of like this experience that you detach from the world, you know. You can think that that could be enjoyable, or weed, for example. But psychedelics, you are battling with your ego, basically. And the more you surrender, the better. But yeah, I wanted to tell this story because I'm getting to the main part. It's been, but yeah, all I'm saying, like all this that I've been saying, is that basically a year after I decided to leave that city, I went to sit with ayahuasca. So yeah, in May 2025, I went to do an ayahuasca retreat in Costa Rica. And first of all, I want to say that if you ever feel called to go on an ayahuasca retreat, I feel like for the majority of people, it's very beneficial. I'm sure there could be cases where it doesn't make sense, or I don't know. I feel like any resistance you have to do this is your ego that want to keep you safe, you know. And I remember I went to this first ayahuasca retreat, and yeah, I remember I was feeling very anxious and super not trusting, you know, not trusting in the, even in the facilitators, in every, like you were, first of all, I was very wounded. Just looking back, I thought, I thought I was like, maybe at that point I was also a little more healed than right after I left New York. I think that year kind of like helped me to heal a little bit, but I was still very wounded. And yeah, I remember I didn't trust the medicine too much in the beginning. But I did decided to, before going, I decided that I'm going to go to this retreat and I'm going to surrender to this experience. I'm going to accept everything that comes as it is, and I'm going to let this be whatever it wants to be, you know? And that's also one thing that I notice in myself, and I notice in other people too, that people tend to have imposter syndrome. People tend to have imposter syndrome when it comes to going to these retreats. And I remember I felt like, am I worthy of being in this ceremony? Like, there's people that are going through so much. Am I worthy of being here? You know, it's my trauma enough for this. And like, stop comparing yourself to others. You know, you're in your own journey and you're dealing with your own traumas. Like, there's people that have different type of traumas and they're like going in their own journeys, but don't compare yourself. If you feel called to do this, don't second guesses. You're there for a reason, you know? Feeling called, I'm just saying, like, if you feel this, like this urge that you want to overcome something inside you, that you feel like there's something within me that it's kind of like not letting me be my best version, you know? But yeah, so yeah, on this ayahuasca retreat, I want to talk about the first ceremony I had in this retreat. And I remember this is something that I feel everyone, it's really hard not to go to an ayahuasca retreat and not have expectations. I feel like I feel like everyone just hears so much stuff about ayahuasca and how that journey goes. It's different for everyone. It's gonna be different for everyone. And you know, and like one ceremony could be super like butterflies and rainbows and super like positive, and the other one could be super like, I don't want to say difficult, but I want to say like more like deep stuff that you need to release, you know. And this is why I mean, like, the least expectations you have, the better. But I remember the first ceremony. You're all in this circle, and the maestros or the shamans, they are in the center. In this retreat specifically, they have one woman maestra, like a maestra and a maestro, that they sit in the middle, and you drink the medicine and you sit and you wait for like about like 40 minutes, 1 hour for the medicine to start working on your body, basically. And then the maestros, they sing the Icaros, and I feel like these are things that is so hard to explain in a video, because it's all happening in a very energetic level, you know. It doesn't make sense with words. I mean, like ayahuasca has its science about it. It's DMT, basically, a chemical that we have in the brain. When you take the medicine, you are in a moment that you become much more conscious, you know. You have like this, I don't want to say you have this, but like you can access this higher mind. But yeah, I remember I closed my eyes. If I would have go back, I would have been with my eyes closed the whole time. You need to, it's like a meditative state, you know. My first retreat, I didn't know that too much, but basically whenever you go to an ayahuasca retreat, you have to be in this meditative state. And yeah, I remember I saw this, like, the visuals you get are, some of the visuals you get are crazy. I remember I saw this kind of like this library of, like, this huge library, and this was basically the representation of this was basically like my brain and this like spaceship going into one of the aisles in the library. And that to me was like, okay, like ayahuasca is now in my body, and it's time, and it's trying, like, it's not, I don't want to say trying, but like it's now exploring the memories that are within me, you know. So I had that visual, and then I started, I feel like everyone, whenever they go to an ayahuasca retreat, for example, they imagine to have these beautiful visuals. And although you can, you might have beautiful visuals, but they all have this expectation. And I feel like I came with this expectation. And I remember I closed my eyes and I was like seeing these like kind of like fireworks, but they were really kind of like not like a aesthetic type of visual. It was like very ugly, you know. It wasn't like very nice to look at. And I was like, why am I not getting like a good visual? Why am I getting this stuff that it's even like uncomfortable to watch? And I was like, but I was like still in a state of like, I'm gonna accept everything as it is, you know, whatever. I was in a very surrendered state, you know. I'm not saying that I didn't have resistance in the later ceremonies, but at that ceremony, I was still in a very surrendered state, and yeah. But yeah, I remember I had those visuals, and kind of like I felt this kind of like rejection from ayahuasca. I mean, what I thought it was like a rejection, you know. Kind of like, what are you doing here? I don't want you here, basically. Like you shouldn't be here, basically. This medicine is not for you. And I felt that, and I was like, that, like in my soul, my soul felt like, okay, I feel like I cannot fit anywhere, you know? I cannot fit anywhere. I feel that was like the moment of realization. I feel this, like I'm this alien that doesn't fit anywhere, you know? I didn't feel in New York, I didn't fit in New York. I didn't fit in high school. I didn't fit in my family. I don't fit in my family. I don't fit in my country that I was born and raised at. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't fit in any of these places. Like, I've never fit in. And now I don't even fit in like the cosmos, the universe, because to me that's ayahuasca. It's like a way to connect yourself with this higher intelligence, you know, this web of infinite web of creation that kind of we are just part of, you know. It's very interesting. But yeah, I was like, okay, so at that point it was just like, okay, so it's just me then. I'm just alone in the world. I don't fit in anywhere. That's fine, you know. I was in such a surrendered state that I was like, that's fine, you know. That's fine. I don't care. I was like, kind of like owning being an alien, you know, in the world, being misunderstood and being kind of like the core of it. It's like not being truly loved, you know. I mean, ayahuasca was like kind of like trying to give me that feeling. And then a memory came up, and this memory came up, and it was this like flashback of me being in 6th grade. It was like this 6th grade graduation party, and it happened in the Club Alemán in Asunción. So yeah, I had this memory of being, I remember I was on the ground in this merry-go-round. Is that an English word? In Spanish we call it calecita. That it's merry-go-round, I think it is. And I was like there on the like on the floor, and I saw like all this, like my classmates just like kicking me, like taking, like kind of like doing it, and they would just like um, kicking me, like beating my ass off, and yeah, um, but yeah, I remember it was so painful. I remember after that happened, yeah. Um, but yeah, after, I mean, in ceremony, I was just first like that memory came up, and I started bawling. I started crying so much. It was like, it's kind of crazy, but it's kind of like that moment happened when they kicked me, and I was like, I mean, as a kid, you know, I was in sixth grade. How old I was, like 10, 11, 12, I don't know, like I don't know how to calculate. Um, but it's kind of like if you're holding that pain and you take it for years, you know, it's crazy. It's crazy at what's been lingering inside you, that trauma for years. Um, but yeah, like it's kind of like that was the moment of release, you know, like ayahuasca kind of like showed me that, like took that memory into light, you know, and I started bawling. I started crying like so much. Um, but yeah, like it's crazy. I had repressed that like memory, and everything became so clear. Sorry, I'm looking back now, and I realize I never finished the end of my first ceremony. So I mentioned how the ceremony started with showing these visuals that were kind of ugly, were not aesthetic as I thought they would be. It was kind of like these dull colors. It was kind of like very gray and brown. It was not very appealing to look at. And then I mentioned that I felt this rejection from ayahuasca. I mean, like what was seemed like as a rejection. Like I don't want you here. Like you don't belong here, basically. But yeah, this feeling of being an outsider, of not belonging anywhere. And then the flashback of my classmates, like some of my classmates, kicking me in that merry-go-round, and like that memory that I had repressed for so long. And when the maestra came in front of me and she started singing the Icaro, it was kind of like releasing all of that trauma, like, and shining light into it. But I forgot to mention the last part of that ceremony. And after that, after I cried so much about that time, I remember then ayahuasca showed me this beautiful visual, and it was like this nature aesthetic. It was kind of like psychedelic and sacred geometry, and it was like these bright colors of yellow and green, and you could see like animals. It was kind of weird but beautiful. And there was this chameleon that it represented ayahuasca, and it kissed my forehead. And to me, it was kind of like a message that, see, it's all good, you know. And the timing is just crazy because right after that, I hear the facilitator saying, "Okay, we're done with our first ceremony," and like they were closing out the ceremony, and then I opened my eyes. But just the entire journey and the timing of it, it blows my mind. And I also wanted to say this because this is a good opportunity for to mention that whenever we sit with ayahuasca, the best way to do it is to be surrendered, you know, in a surrendered state. Um, in that first ceremony, I just accepted whatever, like, even like being rejected from the whole universe, you know? And that's the thing, you need to understand that this medicine just wants you to, like, even if it's uncomfortable, this medicine, it's doing all of it for you. It's for your highest good. Even if it doesn't feel well, or even if it doesn't, even if it's not like comfortable, and that you are struggling or going through a hard time, it's all for your, for the good of you. It's all for your benefit. And yeah, this is why we need to trust the medicine whenever we decide to sit with ayahuasca, and to being receptive to what wants to come up and not being controlling. And that was not the only ceremony that I experienced needing to feel something maybe uncomfortable in order to release it, you know? And I feel like a lot of times ayahuasca is kind of like taking us to these more uncomfortable places or feelings in order to release it, because you need to feel it in order to release it out of your system. And that's the thing, the main point of doing all of this healing work, it's not to maybe get stuck in that memory or not letting it go. The entire point of it, it's just to feel it. You don't even need to think about it. It's just feeling it so that you can let it go. But anyway, I just wanted to tell that end of that first ceremony because I forgot. So yeah, let's go back to the video. But it's crazy that we live our life and something so painful happened to us, you know? I mean, there's people that go through worse stuff and they later in life, I mean, not even later in life, like I can tell you, like, weeks after, I didn't feel like myself, you know? After that moment, this was sixth grade, and I remember I was in the party, and I was just shocked of what just happened, you know? Because that's abuse, you know, physical abuse. And then, but I feel like you disconnect from yourself, you know, like that's the moment, like a moment that you disconnect from yourself. You have completely repressed that memory, and you don't understand why you feel so out of your body, why you feel so disconnected, you know? Because, like, I feel like we can only enjoy life when we are fully present, you know, when we are here. But you're so disconnected from your body, you know, after that. Like, it's a big trauma that you're carrying with you. And I think like a week after or something like that, we had a trip to Mabu. It's kind of like a hotel in Brazil. It's kind of like a 6-hour trip, and it's very common for, I mean, my school at that time, this was like a trip that basically everyone does. It's kind of like a big hotel with a lot of pools. It's a very nice hotel, and everyone, when they graduate from sixth grade, like, we all go to this hotel for, like, I think it's like 3 days or something. But yeah, after this happened, and the reason why, like, this happened, I've always been a kid that it was very different, you know? I do feel like I do think that I am neurodivergent, and I've never got diagnosed with it. But I know, I mean, I feel different. I think different than everyone around me. It's just like, I see life very different than people in general, you know? I do think I'm very neurodivergent. But my point is that I've always been, and I also have like I also have the signs of every, like, of neurodivergence. I used to, whenever I was a kid, I used to walk with my, like, tiptoeing and all of this. And these just things that I learn about later, that I just, like, so many signs that are like, check, 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 you know. I've never got diagnosed with it, but I have no doubt about it. But yeah, I've always been very different, and I feel like, and I've always liked men, you know. I've always been attracted to men. And when I say this, I don't mean like just any man, you know. I'm not like, I don't find, I'm not attracted to, I'm not attracted to every single person, but a very attractive man. I have been attracted to men since a child. And I feel like in school and like whenever you're a kid, people know this, you know, they can tell obviously. Um, and when that situation happened in school, I know it's because of my sexuality. I know that the the classmates who did this to me, they're super homophobic, you know, and people don't talk about how homophobic really is. Like I was raised in a super homophobic environment, and not only like in a very homophobic place, but like a very homophobic time in my life, you know. I remember as a kid hearing like adults and even like my siblings saying that there should be like a Holocaust for gay people, you know. This is a deep in your soul, you know you have this in you, you know. You don't want to admit it to yourself, but you know, and it's just like it creates so much. You know you cannot be safe in the environment around you, you know. It's very clear. And this creates so much self-hatred, you know. After that happened in the Club Alemán, that whenever all these classmates, me just being in the ground and they beating out of me. But a week after we went to Mabu, and I remember even before going to that trip, this is something that I have such clear memory of. And this is just something that I just realized this year, just making the connections. But I remember the day before leaving, I think we were leaving, the bus was leaving at like 5 a.m. in the morning or like 6 a.m. in the morning. And that moment in my life, I remember so vividly. I remember there was like a kind of like a dinner party for adults in my home. I don't know if it was like family or like work, like my mom's work, office, dinner or whatever. But I remember I went to sleep early and I had this dream that it was like this nightmare that kind of like my legs were having a life by itself. And it was such a weird feeling. It was like me not having control over my legs. It was just like kind of like my legs moving for themselves, basically having life for themselves and just taking me wherever they want. It was like such a weird dream. And I didn't understand why. I remember I felt super weird after I woke up, and this was the day after the day before going to Mabu. So yeah, I remember I went to the bus and I was feeling so. It's crazy how you can remember something from like 6th grade, but I remember I felt so insecure. I didn't understand why I was feeling so anxious, so much anxiety, I remember. But yeah, I remember I had an okay time in this trip, but I remember the last day, like the last night, I remember, I don't know who told me this, but I remember someone telling me like, all your clothes or your luggage, it's all in the hallway. And I remember me going to this hallway, like the hotel hallway, and everyone was looking around, and I was like looking at all the clothes that was on the, like all of my clothes, all in the hallway, and like my luggage and my, how can I say this? Basically, I started like knocking on my door. They didn't let me in, like some of my classmates, and there was also other classmates that were not in my room, but they were there. But yeah, I remember I was like knocking to like so they could let me in, and they would not let me in, and I started crying, like seeing like all my clothes in the hallway, and everyone was like looking at me, like everyone was gathering looking at me, and And I feel like the reason why sometimes we I don't know how I'm gonna continue this video. Okay. I feel like one of the reasons that we become so asleep when things like this happen is to protect ourselves, you know? At that moment in my life, I was so disconnected from myself, and I didn't even understand what was happening. And I wanna I wanna make this video well. But anyways, but yeah, I remember when that bus took us back. I remember really well. It dropped us in our school. I was going to, it's called Colegio Goethe in Paraguay, and yeah, I remember I was waiting for my mom to pick me up from that trip, and all I could think of was, I remember I had this dream. I feel like my family were talking about moving to Australia, that they wanted to move us all to Australia, like all of us. And I had this dream of starting. Sorry, I don't want to cry in this video. But my family was talking about going to Australia and start a new life there, and I remember I wanted that so bad. And when when they drop us in our school, in my school in Colegio Goethe, I was waiting to get picked up, and all I could think of, and I feel like I didn't process any of what happened, you know, what happened in Mabu, what happened in the graduation party in the Club Alemán. I didn't process any of it, but I remember all I wanted was like, I want to move to Australia so bad. It's crazy. And we never moved to Australia. After that, I was kicked out of that school. After that, I was kicked out of that school. I remember in that school there's something called febrero. So if you didn't pass the last exam, I kind of failed in German, like the language German. So I had to retake that exam in February, right before the classes start. And they told me that I basically prepared myself for this the entire summer. And the entire summer, like now it's so clear. I was like, how can I see this? There was this unhappiness in me that I didn't. that I didn't know where it was coming from. But they told me that I failed the last exam, so they kicked me out of that school. And I had to I had to go to a new school, and things were starting to get better. You know, I had like an opportunity to meet new people, and like the more I think about, I have been dealing with people just trashing on your name and dehumanizing since I was a kid. You know, what happened in New York, like all that dynamic, I that was just an aftermath of what had been happening since I was a childhood. You know, and I also mentioned in this channel that I had an uncle that used to heavily bully me. You know, for my sexuality too. You know, because your family knows, but heavily bullied me. My mom never said anything. My grandma never said anything. My dad never defended me or anything. It was just I mentioned I had one aunt that is the only person she stood up for me. You know. But if you're born in like an environment like that, how can you expect to feel free whenever you're an adult? You know. I mean, if you heal yourself, you're gonna like release all that has been like blinding you from who you are, you know. But when you're a kid, you're taking you're internalizing all of this, you know, and your self-worth is just on the floor. But anyways, but yeah, they kicked me out of this school. Like this happening like in the lapse, like in the time lapse of what, like 2 months. But yeah, but yeah, that's what I mean. Like everything bad that happened to me in New York, like all that like darkness that I experienced, that bullying and people kind of like dragging your name to the dirt, and all these people treating you like horribly, these betrayals, this gossip, and this like all of this darkness, like that was a huge opportunity for me. I didn't even know that it would take me to do ayahuasca and to take that deep seated memory out of my body, you know, like out of it. And then you start to like heal yourself, and you start, all that thing is like no longer part of your subconscious, it's out, you know. You just made it seen, and you felt what was lingering for so many years. That trauma was living inside of me. What's the quote that Carl Jung said? Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you would call it fate. And that's the craziest thing to me. It's like we sometimes live with this trauma that it's driving our life, you know, that it's just creating undesirable experiences in our life that we, and it's not like, oh no, God hates me, or you know, it's just stuff that you need to remove out of your subconscious. And yeah, and this is why we need to decide to heal ourselves. And if we don't like something about our life, we can always say like, you know what, I'm gonna explore where is this coming from, you know, start from there. And maybe it has taken so many lifetimes to get to this place, you know, to finally making it seen, to finally saying like, stop it, I don't wanna live my life anymore, you know, in suffering, in always being in this hypervigilance, you know, since childhood you're like hypervigilant. You have to emotionally regulate all this, like you're surrounded by adults that don't even know how to regulate themselves, you know. You know, you are taking all this, since you're a kid, you're just absorbing all of this. But yeah, it's not your fault whatever they did to you, but it is your responsibility to do something about it. I feel like it is our responsibility to heal ourselves from whatever trauma we had in childhood or later in life. Otherwise, I feel like if I First of all, there were, I mean, I felt like back in New York, I had two options. My ego, it wanted to stay in New York and prove everyone wrong, you know? I wanted to prove everyone that I'm a good person, that that was just a bad, kind of like a distorted version of me that they were creating. And like my ego wanted to prove right, you know, like wanted to prove all of them wrong. And the other part of me was like, I just want peace. I don't care. I don't care whatever they think. They can think whatever they want about me. They can keep saying whatever they want. I'm choosing peace, you know. I and and it's what I chose. Like it's the decision I decided to do, and I do not regret it at all. But yeah, I need also to understand that no one would ever choose darkness, you know? No one would ever choose to experience like darkness in their life. But when you do, it's a huge opportunity for you to bring light into into the darkness, you know? Like I feel like imagine if you're in a room where it's like with a lot of light. It's you're not gonna make much different like bringing your light, but if you bring your light in a very dark environment, you're making a lot of it conscious, you know. This is why this is not like even and I'm not gonna be the kind of person that it's like, oh, you should be grateful for that super dark experience in your life. I'm not saying that to you. What I'm saying is that it's a huge opportunity for you to transform your life. And I'm telling you, like, the way I see the world, it just, I'm a different person right now, you know, and I'm not, and I know I'm just scratching the surface of where I want to get in life and all the things that I want to do. I feel so, I'm not conforming with anything less than what I know I deserve, you know? Maybe, I don't know, I'll do my best to get to that place in this lifetime, you know? Who knows that if it can happen? I feel like you cannot do everything you want in this life, but you can do a lot. And at that point in my life, just the things that I wanted to do in my career, my finances, the relationships, now my standards, this was my standards there, which for, I feel like it was like the pretty average of what most people would expect to have, like an okay job, like good salary, like having good relationships, you know, like very like, but it was super, now looking back, it was super mediocre, my expectations, just my standards. Now I'm just like, I want to do like, even like my finances, I don't want to just survive in this world and just to be okay to, I want to, I'm shooting for a lot in this life. I don't want to worry about money in the future, you know? I want to be over that, you know? I want to be able to be so abundant that I have my nice house, have my car, whatever I need, but the rest I just donate everything to the places that I want to put my money on, you know? I want to be so abundant that it just flows, you know? I don't need to worry in any way about money because I know it's money is energy, you know? Just that's just one example, but I feel like slowly my standards just now, even though my reality is starting now to reflect the inner work that I have made, but my standards are there, you know, and like if that experience, if that one of the worst moments of my life didn't explode like that, it was chaos basically, and my nervous system just a mess. But if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be here, you know, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now, and it's up to you, you know. When that happens, you can either choose to prove people wrong, that like, no, I'm not this person, you know, like letting your ego drive the situation, or you can heal yourself and make magic out of it, make art out of that pain. But yeah, that was the video. And yeah, if you're going through something really hard in your life right now, all my love towards you, because I feel like sometimes in those moments we can feel so alone. But I just hope you choose to understand that this bad thing that it's happening to you, you have the chance to overcome it, you know? At that point in my life, I'm telling you, I was seeing no light at the end of the tunnel. Everything was becoming so dark, and I was creating more and more bad experiences because it's kind of like a disease, you know? It's kind of like a poison that it's poisoning your mind. It's poisoning everyone's perception of you. You know, it's poisoning all that environment, that circle becoming a cage, that circle of friends, that circle that you surround yourself with becoming a cage. You feel like you are kind of like a prisoner of what everyone thinks about you, you know, because you're disconnecting from yourself and you're caring for what everyone thinks about you. And if you add drugs into that, which I was doing, like I was partying and still like I didn't want to accept the fact that I needed to leave this toxic environment. I was still doing like drugs every weekend, and I mentioned ketamine every day. And that's the thing, if you're, this is not me telling anyone to become sober or anything, but when you, for example, let's use the example of drinking. If you drink, you become less conscious, you know? It's kind of like you cannot have control over yourself, you know? You cannot be as centered, you know? And if you disconnect yourself from yourself, you become everyone else's projection of you. And that's why, yeah, I mean, I feel like I never had to go to rehab or anything, you know. It never got to that point or anything. But I chose to become sober and not do any of those substances anymore. Substances, I'm talking about ketamine, MDMA. MDMA, like, don't get me wrong, like MDMA, I'm not saying it's negative, but I just don't do it anymore. And I used to do something called G. It's very popular in the gay world, and I used to do a lot of G. And ooh, that it's so harmful for you. That it's so bad for you. And yeah, and yeah, it's kind of like this is how I see it. You stop being in control of yourself. And if you are around people that see you in a bad light, that see you as you are this like person with ulterior motives, and that kind of like this distortion of you, you will become that if you're surrounding yourself with, it's like the beliefs you have of yourself against the belief of everyone else around you, you know? Because their beliefs create their reality. And if you disconnect from yourself, you're only gonna reflect to these people the beliefs they have about you, you know? Even if you say something, even if you don't mean this, they're gonna take it this way, you know? So leave that environment. If you're ever in a place like this could be family, friends, a relationship. If it's toxic, decide to leave that environment. That's the first step. You need to prioritize yourself and respect yourself, because you deserve good relationships, you know? You deserve to feel safe with people around you. I know I always bring out the best versions in other people. Like, I expect the best versions of other people, and I expect people to see me in a good light too. You know, that's the minimum. That's the minimum. Like to have people to not project that you are this person, you know? But yeah, if you're in a dark place in your life, it's not, I know it might seem like there's no escape. There's always a way. There is always a way. And the life you imagine it right now, you might not even see it as possible, you know, like that. Even like overcoming a financial situation, I don't know, people can go through so many bad things in their life, or maybe the loss of a family member, or something really dark in your life, and you think that like you will never be happy again, but there's always a way. And at the moment it's kind of like you are in this place and it's just clouds that don't let you see the light yet, but there's always the sun, you know, there's always light. That you are just at a moment in your life where you just cannot see it now, you know, where it feels gray. But it's understanding that everything passes, you know, everything passes. And it's to use that time to, I feel like sometimes it gets so bad that it really forces us to go within, you know. So it's good to not wait until it gets so bad that we have to go in, you know. This is what I mean. I always say, like, you should meditate, you know, you should meditate, you should listening to frequency vibrations. Even like, I feel like in the spiritual journey or the healing journey, it starts with so many different levels, but maybe in the beginning it's just saying affirmations, you know, and praying, or like, you can call it praying, but it's, to me, it's like being grateful for everything that you have, you know. If you're in a dark period of your life and you cannot see many things that you can be grateful for, there's always things you can find to be grateful for. Like, I'm grateful for my health, I'm grateful for maybe, but yeah, I'm grateful to have a space, a place that I can heal myself, that I can keep growing, you know, keep working on myself. I'm grateful that I have food that I can eat. And like, the more you say this, even if it starts very little, the more you start, and even if there's things that like you're maybe working with your health, you can still say like, thank you for my good health, you know, you're like manifesting it. But using your words for creating your new life, you know, there's many things, but yeah. So I hope this video was helpful, and let me know in the comments if you also had experiences in your life that maybe you had a realization that there's an experience that you have been just carrying with you in your subconscious, and that was blocking you from being in your highest potential. And I don't know, I'm very curious to know. And so yeah, all the best. Peace.